former champion from 2 years ago is through to a third.
Alex Eala just lost in Linz, and Greg Rusedski still could not stop talking about how good she is. A straight sets defeat against a former Grand Slam champion, and the conversation coming out of it is still mostly about Eala's potential. Losing and still generating this much praise says something. Let's get into exactly what Rusedski said and why it matters. Do you think Alex Eala can crack the top 20 by the end of the clay court season? Drop your prediction in the comments right now. Let's start with the match itself because it deserves an honest look before we get into everything else.
It's just a momentum flow at the moment. A brutal display of power tennis from Jelena Ostapenko. She was well down in that second set, but she roared back.
Alex Eala lost to Jelena Ostapenko in straight sets at the Upper Austria Ladies Linz tournament. Final score 6-4, 7-5. And before anyone writes this off as a routine defeat against a better player, let's talk about what actually happened in that second set, because it tells a more interesting story than the scoreline does. Eala raced out to a 5-1 lead in the second set against a former French Open champion, against a player who hits the ball harder than almost anyone on tour and has been causing problems for top 10 players for years. Eala was one game away from forcing a deciding third set and had complete control of the situation. And then she could not close it.
It was a set that was going Alex Eala's way, who was a breakup, but Ostapenko has roared back. She took the last 4 games.
Ostapenko came back from 1-5 down to win the set 7-5 and take the match. That collapse from a dominant position is the part that stings, and it is also the part that Greg Rusedski zeroed in on when he discussed her game. Not to pile on, but to identify exactly what she needs to work on to stop this pattern from repeating at the worst possible moments. But before we get to the criticism, let's be clear about what this defeat actually cost her in practical terms. Eala went into this Linz tournament ranked 46 in the world after dropping from 32 following her loss to Linda Noskova in Miami. That Miami drop hurt because she had reached the semifinals of the WTA 1000 event there the previous year and could not match that result this time around. Defending points is one of the most brutal aspects of professional tennis, and she got reminded of that in Florida. In Linz, she collected 60 ranking points from winning her first round match and has moved up 1 spot to number 45 in the live WTA rankings. Her prize money from the event came in at around 15,000 euros. Not nothing, but not the kind of number that changes your year either. The real prize on offer in Linz was the ranking points that come with going deep in a 500-level event, and she did not get there. So she moves on to Stuttgart with work still to do. Now let's talk about what Rusedski actually said, because he did not hold back. And the praise coming from someone who reached a Grand Slam final and spent years at the top of the men's game is worth paying attention to. He compared her to Manny Pacquiao, specifically in terms of what she means to the Philippines and the way Filipino people everywhere rally around their sporting heroes. He said wherever you go in the world and find Filipino people, they are already talking about Eala, already asking what they can cook for her, what they can do for her, how they can show up for her. He said her matches automatically sell out and that she opens up an entire marketplace for the WTA that did not exist before she arrived. That is not a small thing. That is an analyst with decades of experience in professional tennis, recognizing that what Eala represents goes beyond her ranking or her results on any given week. She is doing something commercially and culturally for the sport that most players ranked far above her cannot do. The audience she brings with her travels. It fills seats. It generates interest in tournaments that previously struggled to draw attention beyond their local market. Rusedski said she is a huge positive for the WTA and that the tour needs more stars, more names, and new people. That sentence is worth sitting with for a second. He is not just complimenting her tennis. He is saying the WTA has a star problem, and Eala is one of the solutions to it. Coming from someone who has watched tennis at the highest level for 30 years, that is a real statement. He also said he would love to see her crack the top 20. And specifically, he said he would love to see her do it on clay. Now, why clay? Because clay is where Eala's background gives her a legitimate platform to compete. She spent years training at the Rafael Nadal Academy. The man who won 14 French Opens built his entire career on clay. The principles he built that academy around, the heavy topspin, the defensive positioning, the ability to grind through long rallies and wait for the right ball, all of that is baked into the DNA of that training environment. Players who come through the Nadal Academy on clay are not learning to survive on the surface. They are learning to own it. Rusedski specifically pointed out that clay is going to be harder for opponents to blow through Eala's game. On hard courts, there are more angles, more pace, and more ways for a bigger hitter like Ostapenko to just blow you off the court before you can establish your patterns. Clay slows everything down. Points get longer. Positioning matters more. The mental and physical endurance required goes up significantly, and Rusedski believes those are conditions that suit Eala's game and her background. He said Nadal has spent real time with her on clay and she knows what to do on the surface. Coming from Rafael Nadal, that knowledge transfer is about as good as it gets in the sport. Nobody in the history of tennis has understood clay the way he did. If even a fraction of that courtcraft has filtered through to Eala during her years at his academy, she is better prepared for the clay swing than most players at her ranking. Now let's be fair and acknowledge the criticism that comes alongside all of this, because Rusedski did not only deliver praise. He talked about her serve needing to improve. He mentioned that she needs to add more facets to her game to compete consistently with the best players in the world. And the Linz loss illustrated exactly what he meant. A 5-1 lead in the second set that becomes a 5-7 loss is a mental and tactical problem as much as a physical one. When you have a top opponent in trouble, the ability to close it out requires a serve that holds up under pressure and a game plan that can adapt when your opponent makes adjustments. Ostapenko is one of the most dangerous ball strikers on the women's tour. When she is down and has nothing to lose, she starts going for everything, and her flat, heavy ball becomes even more aggressive. Handling that requires a serve that gives you free points and takes pressure off your ground game at critical moments. Eala could not hold her advantage in the second set, and a big part of why is that Ostapenko found her range, and Eala had no automatic weapon to fall back on to buy herself some breathing room. That is the work that needs to happen between now and the French Open if she wants this clay swing to be the one where she finally makes her move up the rankings in a meaningful way. Now let's look at where she goes from here, because the schedule coming up is genuinely exciting and genuinely challenging in equal measure. Stuttgart is next. The Porsche Tennis Grand Prix is a WTA 500 event, and the entry list reads like a who's who of the current tour. Aryna Sabalenka is in the draw. World number 1, the best server in women's tennis, and physically one of the most dominant players the game has seen in years. Coco Gauff is in the draw. French Open champion and one of the most complete players on tour, with a game that actually travels well to clay. Iga Swiatek is in the draw. The woman who has won the French Open 4 times, and who, despite some inconsistency this season, remains one of the most dangerous clay court players alive. And Alex Eala is also in the draw. That field is about as tough as it gets outside of a Grand Slam, but it is also the exact kind of environment that accelerates development for a young player. You learn more from competing against Sabalenka for an hour than you do from winning 3 matches against lower-ranked players. The adjustments you are forced to make, the standards you are forced to meet, the pressure you have to handle just to stay in a set, all of that deposits into your game in ways that easier wins simply cannot. Rusedski's belief that clay suits her timing is going to get tested in Stuttgart in the best possible way. If she can take a set off any of the top seeds, that in itself would represent a significant moment. If she can go further, the ranking implications start to get interesting. She is currently at 45. The top 20 is the target Rusedski laid out. Getting from 45 to 20 in one clay swing is ambitious, but it is not impossible if she strings together results across Stuttgart, Madrid, Rome, and then Roland Garros. Each of those events offers points. Each of those events offers a platform. And each of those events will have a stadium full of Filipino fans wherever it is held, because that is just what happens when Alex Eala is on a court somewhere in the world. The Manny Pacquiao comparison Rusedski made is worth coming back to because it captures something important about what she is carrying. Pacquiao was not just a boxer. He was a symbol of something much larger than his sport for millions of people. The weight of that kind of representation can either crush you or fuel you. For Pacquiao, it fueled him for decades. The question with Eala is whether she can channel that same energy into results at the biggest tournaments without letting the pressure of what she represents become heavier than the tennis itself. So far, the signs are genuinely encouraging. She handled the Miami run with composure. She showed up in Linz and reached the second round. She is moving into Stuttgart with her eyes open about what she needs to improve. That is a player with a realistic understanding of where her game is and what it takes to get where she wants to go. The Linz loss hurts in the short term. 60 ranking points and 15,000 euros is a modest return from a week's work at this level of competition. But the conversation coming out of it, Rusedski name-dropping her, alongside the biggest cultural sports figures in Philippines history, putting her in the same breath as Sabalenka and Gauff when discussing who the WTA needs telling his podcast audience he would love to see her in the top 20 on clay. That is a different kind of return that does not show up in the rankings. Players who generate that kind of conversation from respected voices in the sport, even after a loss, are building something. The ranking will catch up to the reputation if the work gets done. And if the Nadal Academy clay court education kicks in properly this spring, Stuttgart might just be the week where things start moving in the right direction. She lost in Linz, but Greg Rusedski still could not stop talking about how much she means to the sport. The clay court season is just getting started, and Stuttgart is next with Sabalenka, Gauff, and Swiatek all in the draw. Hit like, subscribe, and drop your prediction below. How far does Eala go before the French Open this year?